Hey everybody, Liz here. Today we're going to be going over 3 main tips to help you not have low back pain or low back tension while you're doing core exercises. My name is Liz, and I am a doctor of physical therapy. I'm also a mountain biking skills coach. Those two combined, I created the Ride Life, which is online strength and endurance programs for women mountain bikers. Let's pop into those 3 tips now. When it comes to our core is not just our abdominal muscles. It's not just our back muscles. It's how a group and series of muscles come together to support our trunk as a whole and give us stability so we can use our arms and our legs more efficiently, especially while we're on the bike. That is where our core comes in drastically, because our core becomes the stability for us to power the bike forward because we're moving forward as a whole. So the core are some of our abdominal muscles, our obliques, our rectus abdominis. The obliques and what's called the transverse abdominis wrap around to the back side of our body. They connect into what's called the thoracolumbar fascia. It's basically, think about it like a really thick saran wrap that comes out from your spine, kind of in this form, and those oblique muscles attach into it. Well, that saran wrap also attaches to your spine, and so now we have this full circumferential activation and tightening up across that, kind of like a corset, you would say. Well, we don't just have the surrounding effect. We also have a bottom, we have a top. Our bottom is our pelvic floor. If you're a guy that's listening to this, you also have a pelvic floor, and it is very important for you as well. If you're a female and you have not had a baby, I had a baby, she's 1 year old right now, and so pelvic floor has been a pretty big issue for me, or a pretty big focus of mine for the past year and a half. Maybe more, because I had abdominal surgery before that. Anyways, so pelvic floor is super important, even if you haven't had a baby. There's many women, especially athletes, that hold too much tension down there and can't relax that. And so if you can't relax and breathe in to your body, then you're not going to be able to use your core properly. The top part of our core is our diaphragm. Our diaphragm regulates this pressure. And so as we think about this cylinder as a whole, we're regulating pressure here, and we're controlling and giving stability to other things that are on top of, like our upper cylinder, that has our ribs and some of our neck muscles to be the top part, and also our legs, our arms. It gives us strength through here. And so as we talk about our core and doing exercises to not stress our back, but to support it, we need to think about all of these guys coming together. Typically, when we have back pain and we're doing core exercises, we have a lack of activation patterning. We don't actually engage properly. And so for tip number 1, go back, look at your activation patterning. I'm going to walk you through a way to look at it yourself right now. If you think that you're good there, skip to tip number 2. But for this activation patterning, it's a lot of breath work. So we're going to lay on our back. Then we're going to switch to sideline. We're going to switch to hands and knees, and then to kind of a tall kneeling or hip hinge. All of these activate and use your core differently because gravity is affecting us differently in those different positions. All of them are important for us to be able to use our cylinder as a whole to support itself, so then we can do different exercises to strengthen it and also to improve our endurance of our core. Because we don't always need this Hulk kind of contraction, but we need it to stay for a long period of time. There are postural muscles. We need to maintain our posture upright and different things throughout the entire day. Let's get into the actually activation breathing exercise. When we're doing this, I'm going to have my shirt up so you can see what's going on. I also have a couple scars because I recently had abdominal surgery. I had an ovarian cyst removed, which wasn't the best. But these are actually perfect exercises for me to be doing right now to re-engage my brain to body connection. So as you're doing this, as you're laying on your back, we want to first think about our inhale. As we inhale, our abdominal muscles relax and we expand our belly out. Our pelvic floor actually drops down. But our diaphragm actually, it contracts because as it's sitting naturally, it's sitting up in our chest right here. As it contracts, it's going to shorten and it's going to drop down into our stomach. That's why they call it diaphragmatic breathing whenever we put more air into our belly, because our diaphragm is actually contracting to draw the air downward into our lower cylinder area. So breathe in, and then you breathe out. As we breathe out, our diaphragm relaxes. It sits back up into its normal resting position. Our abs tighten up across here. We want to feel a lot of activation on the side parts of our stomach, kind of right above the hip bones. That's kind of the front part of the hip bones as it starts to what's called our iliac crest. We want to make sure we're engaging through here. As we breathe out, we also are going to have our pelvic floor rise up, and that's going to help that activation and coordination between our core muscles and our abdominals and our core muscle of our pelvic floor. So again, we're just going to go through this so you get the idea. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. We loosen up the abdominal muscles. We loosen up our pelvic floor. As we breathe out, we tighten up across. We should feel a flattening effect across here. We don't want to suck in and expand our rib cage outward, because that's not actually tightening up my stomach muscles. Think about if you're going to get hit by somebody, you don't want to suck in for it. You want to make yourself whole. We don't want to dent our can or our cylinder, because that's whenever you're going to be easily scrunched. We want to make sure that's nice and flat across that. We also don't want to have just a one single strip down the center here, and that's what's called tenting. I don't know if you can see the difference there. For me, is that these ones aren't really, they're kind of sunken in, and this main part, my rectus abdominis, is what's sticking out. And so as I breathe out, you'll breathe out through your mouth in a small hole. You'll see that flattening effect across these main points. And you should be ready, if someone was going to punch you in your stomach, you should be ready to take that hit. Good. Now that you kind of have the idea, we're going to lay on our side, where it sometimes can be a little easier for you. And so as we breathe in, stomach drops. Breathe out, stomach comes together. It's a little harder to feel your pelvic floor, at least it is for me in this position, because now my legs are moving. I have just a lot more inputs there, but it's easier to breathe into my belly and also to breathe out and feel that contraction, because my abdominal contents are kind of like, they want to fall out of my stomach even if I'm relaxed all the way. Perfect. As we pop into our hands and knees, same thing we want to think about is that as you relax, belly goes down, pelvic floor relaxes. Also, as you notice, naturally when I relax, my back is going to sag down a little bit, and as I engage, I do a little bit of what's called a posterior pelvic tilt, where I engage a little bit more through here, and that tilts my pelvis back slightly. And then last position that I like to have people do is in a tall kneeling or hip hinge position. In this one, you should feel, if you have any of that low back tension that you hold back through there, as you relax, you should feel almost these guys like holding you up. And then as you breathe out to engage, you should almost feel it taking a relaxation. That it's like, oh, I don't have to do it all. I can relax and hold this position because I have help. I have other muscles working as a whole to help me hold this position and be strong there. Now that you have an idea of your activation patterning, now we need to look at an actual exercise. As you're doing your core work, we want to think about load. Load is something that is inevitably hard to correlate to or to think about and add on slowly, because we think load of like weight. We think, okay, I was using a 3-pounder, now I'm using a 5-pounder. I was using a 25, now I need a 30. And so as you're thinking about those load, we don't add weight to our core exercises. We don't add weight to our legs because those are part of what we do if we're doing like a leg reach. And a lot of us tend to do exercises that are a little bit too advanced or add too much load to our body. So as you're doing any like leg reach outs when you're on your back, or if you're doing other deadlifts or hip hinge holds, if you're on your hands and knees and doing reach outs, planks, all of these are load. And we want to load our body appropriately, but not overload it. If we overload our body, then our brain says, oh, I can get this done. I can make this happen. I'm just going to use my low back muscles. I'm going to use my hip flexor muscles. I'm going to use my quad muscles. I will make this happen because you want to actually perform the exercise and you want to get it done. But what we lose is that ability to listen to our body that says, I'm using my back muscles, I'm using my hip flexors, and we say that that's okay as we're doing these exercises. Well, if you have low back tension, if you have low back pain, then you have to be more specific in the fact that it's not okay for you to actually have those low back tension and actually using those muscles while you're doing your core exercises. We need to make sure you have a right load to be able for your brain to say, oh, it's okay. I don't need those back muscles. I don't need my hip flexor muscles. I'm going to use my core. But if you've been in this pattern of using your low back muscles so much in every single one of your core exercises or a majority of your core exercises, then you'll have to stop before you fatigue all the way because your brain is in a natural habit to switch over and use these other muscles when your core gets a little bit more fatigued. And then it overuses your back muscles or overuses your hip flexor muscles, which will then turn into pain or an imbalancement, and it won't continue to strengthen the weak parts of your core. And those are what we really need to focus on to help you increase your strength, to help you increase your endurance, and to stave off the low back pain and make sure that you're supported in that. So I'm going to give you an example. So as I said before, I had abdominal surgery a couple weeks ago, and so I'm getting back into my core exercises. And so my pattern is not correct right now for if I add too much load. My body says, oh, I'll get it done because I've been having to lift my 1-year-old up and down and live. But when I'm doing my exercises, I really need to give my body those good movement patterns. I need to focus on how I'm actually using my core muscles here. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to do my breath out to activate. I got that nice tightening up across. Then I'm going to raise one leg up. As I'm reaching this leg out, right about there, I start to tent. I start to use mainly my rectus abdominis muscle, and I start to suck in a little bit on the sides. And so that's whenever my patterning starts shifting from being correct as it was here. And so I can only go out just a little bit without changing my activation patterning. If I really think about it, I can do better. And I can reach out a little bit farther now that I've warmed up a bit. Hey, yeah. But you notice my other foot's on the ground. And so if I added more load, then that's my movement that I can do. Because now I have to control the load of both of these, wanting to tilt my pelvis this way, and I have to use my abdominal muscles to hold it back and control. And that's where this activation patterning and the load that you're putting on it matter a whole lot for you. Tip number 3. Tip number 3 is we need not only strength but endurance to use our cylinder as a whole. So many of us, we need to strengthen that cylinder. Just as I was showing you as I was laying on the back, is that I need to strengthen not only my abs, but my cylinder as a whole, because I'd rather just use my rectus abdominis than control and tighten as a whole cylindrically. Not only do we need to work on that on our back, but we also need to work on that in a hip hinge, a deadlift position, a bent over position, whatever you want to call it. I love to do that in a tall kneeling position or on my knees versus standing because it isolates this even a little bit better. And I can control that cylinder activation and I can support my back with it. This is especially key if you get back pain while you're on the bike and while you're riding downhill. Now, side note, I am running a special come January for some of my online programs. Check it out. It's great if you have these issues because it gives you exercises to work through some of these activation patterns you're loading and also this hip hinge. So for the hip hinge, get up in a tall kneeling position, hinge over, and so now you can see my weight's on my knees, my feet are nice and relaxed, and I'm actually holding through my glutes to help me hold up and through my core as a whole. If you are holding more like this, more of a stripper booty style, you'll probably feel more activation of your back muscles. If you're holding through here and you're too slouched over, kind of like you're tucking your tail or you're a sad dog, then you'll also feel stress through here. Because we're not using our cylinder as a whole, we're not able to activate as well through here. And so as you're holding that nice flat back position, that's when you can feel that activation of your core. Do that exhale. And you can feel that tightening up across and that support. And so in this, you can hold it. It's similar to a plank. If you need a little bit of load off, you can put your fingers down a bit and hold that. If you want to add more load, then grab a weight and hold it here. This is great for holding strength and endurance. As you hold this, you may notice, oh my gosh, my back is starting to act up. Can you tuck a little bit or move a little bit here through your pelvis to activate a little bit more of those cylinders? Or do that breath out, and does that help with holding there? Can you maintain this? Do you feel your glutes working more? To have better glute activation, you have to have better core activation. And this exercise helps with that control all the way around and that stability to use your glutes, activate your core, and support yourself. Whew. I'm fatiguing out because my core is not as strong as it needs to be. How did I know I was fatiguing out? Is I was starting to feel my back muscles start to tighten too much, and I couldn't support them as well. That's your key. Take a TL, rest for about 15 seconds, and then pop up into it. Immediately feels better. I feel like I'm more supported through here, and I can hold it and talk and breathe. Those are key functions to help you. So again, in recap, 1, check your activation patterning. Are you actually engaging your core how you need to? Is your pelvic floor and diaphragm, are they involved? 2, are you loading yourself properly? Are you adding too much load where your brain says, I need help. I can't do this alone with just my core. I'm going to actually use more of my back muscles and more of my hip flexors to help me integrate and to help me perform this task. 3, are you working your whole core as a cylinder? Making sure you're doing some hip hinge exercises where you're working not only strength but also endurance. Those tie in and really help support you as a whole. Again, as you're on your back, you're going to be working more of your abdominal muscles. As you're working in that hip hinge, you're going to be working some of your back muscles. It's okay, but you don't want it to feel like they are getting too tired, too tense, and too stressed without you actually engaging and using the cylinder as a whole, because your arms are up. You're floating in the air, so you need the front as well as the back when you're in that hip hinge position. Unlike when you're on your back, when you don't need your back muscles because you have the floor there. You're resting on it. That is a predominantly front body exercise, and you shouldn't feel your back working that much at all, and you shouldn't feel your hip flexors working because they don't need to be helped. You do more hip flexor activation when you're walking up steps. Do you feel them there? Most likely not. So you shouldn't feel them when you're doing these ab exercises where you're moving your legs just a little bit. I hope this helps. If you liked it, subscribe. If you have any comments or other questions, I'd love to know what they are. I can answer them in future videos. And again, I hope this was super helpful for you. Again, I'm running a sale in January, and it's going to be specifically for the core crushers. It's going to have a little bit of something special that's going to happen with the Ride Life team, which is my full body complete workout program. But the core crushers is going to have an accountability challenge, and it's going to help you to really put exercises to the words that I just told you how to do. Because sometimes you can say, I understand that, but now actually what do I do? That's what the core crushers does. That's also what the Ride Life team does. It has a pelvic floor section to help you with understanding if you have issues with relaxing and engaging. All of those things are so important. So check back. I'll put a link in the description below, and also maybe we'll put them right here at the end of the video. Cheers, y'all.